man simply turned around and accidentally knocked over a plate of eggs, but in the very next second, he noticed something strange. The eggs were sizzling on the ground. He looked up and realized that something beneath the earth seemed ready to burst through the surface. Terrified, he scrambled into his car, started the engine, and sped away. Before he could get far, roaring flames suddenly erupted from underground. Within seconds, they formed a massive fire dragon that swallowed the surrounding houses whole. The road began to sink and collapse, and the skyscrapers lining the streets toppled one after another, with the fiery dragon chasing him from behind. The man slammed the gas pedal to the floor, his tires nearly smoking. In the final second before being consumed by the flames, he barely escaped the danger. Shaken but alive, he stepped out of the car and looked back only to see the fire dragon had already devoured the entire city. What he didn't realize was that this crisis had only just begun. Above the desert of the towering waves hundreds of meters high suddenly surged into the sky, roaring toward defenseless crowds. Over a brick-sized hailstones fell without warning, leaving countless casualties in moments. Meanwhile, across the ocean in Dour, monstrous waves rose violently. Even more terrifying, a freezing air current swept in, instantly turning the massive tsunami into solid ice. The ocean surface transformed into a frozen wasteland in mere seconds. People on the beach had no time to escape. Anyone touched by the frigid blast was frozen into an ice statue instantly. Faced with disasters of such magnitude, humanity was utterly helpless, forced to watch everything unfold. In response to this series of abnormal catastrophes, they immediately convened an emergency meeting. After investigation, it was discovered that these devastating natural calamities were actually the result of humanity's own actions. For years, reckless environmental destruction had driven global temperatures higher and higher. Glaciers accelerated their melting. Sea levels kept rising, and earthquakes, floods, and landslides became increasingly frequent. To combat natural disasters, China and the United States jointly led the development of a global weather control system. Countless satellites were launched into space, forming a star-linked network capable of covering the entire planet. With the push of a button, they could supposedly ensure favorable weather. But several satellites suddenly went out of control, triggering near-apocalyptic disasters for humanity. At first, everyone assumed it was a technical malfunction. Then another accident occurred. At the space station, an astronaut assigned to repair the satellites was sucked into space. High-level officials quickly realized the weather control satellite network system had likely been compromised. Someone had to go up and fix it immediately. While reviewing the surveillance footage, Mark sharply noticed that an astronaut had once hidden a hard drive inside the locker room. He retrieved it and discovered that someone had implanted a control virus into the satellite network. The virus was executing a malicious operation called Project Zeus, all the extreme weather currently devastating. Earth was being triggered by this very program. Worse still, the person controlling the virus was likely hiding aboard the space station. To avoid alerting the culprit, Mark contacted his brother, Aoi, using coded language to explain everything. After hearing the truth, Aoi didn't dare waste a second. He immediately sought help from his girlfriend, Xiao Mei, who worked as a bodyguard for the president. Through her, they were able to gain access to the confidential files of Project Zeus. What they uncovered was beyond shocking. The mastermind planned to use the global weather control satellite network to attack hundreds of designated cities around the world. Aoi quickly informed his brother. At the same time, Mark confirmed that the satellites had indeed been infected with the virus, which was why the system had spiraled out of control. He explained that the only way to restore order was to reboot the entire satellite network. This would erase the virus. However, rebooting required the ultimate override password, and only the president possessed it. Just as they began to suspect the president might be the mastermind, the satellites malfunctioned again. This time, more than 100 of them. Mark urgently arranged a meeting with the president and revealed the full truth. The president initially refused to believe. There was a traitor inside the White House until the vice president's bodyguard suddenly produced a timed explosive device. Fortunately, the president had switched vehicles in advance and was unharmed. He immediately ordered the vice president's arrest and provided Mark with the satellite override code. But it was almost too late. The virus inside the system had already activated a self-defense protocol. The space station was on the verge of destruction. Mark had to enter the forced shutdown code before the control room exploded. Otherwise, with countless satellites spiraling out of control, the entire planet would face annihilation. At the final moment, the system was successfully rebooted. Humanity was granted another chance at redemption. Even so, explosions continued to rip through space. Mark struggled on the edge of life and death before finally locating an escape pod and safely returning to Earth. Soon after, humanity repaired the weather control system. Mark continued his mission to safeguard the planet and create a safer future for mankind. The rapid advancement of technology is a double-edged sword. Once it falls into the hands of those with malicious intent, it can become an immeasurable disaster for all humanity.